I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie.
Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black T News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black T News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the Olympics. I don't feel like showing you guys all the images, though. I'm so sure that you have seen it by now. I'm so sure that you have seen it by now. I hate all that stuff popping up on my timeline, and I've seen more than I wanted to see. So if you guys want to Google it real quick, press pause. You guys can see it for yourself. I don't plan to really show anything, but we're gonna talk about it at the very least. Again, it happened on, was it Saturday, or it happened over the weekend, and might have been Friday. I don't know, but I don't feel like sharing that stuff. So anyway, we'll talk about that. Also, Biden is proposing major changes to the Supreme Court, mostly because they haven't gotten their way, and they like to legislate from the bench. So they're trying to do what they can to change it. And obviously it's not a good thing. So we'll talk about that. Also, someone sent me a bit of a critique, or didn't send me a critique. They left a pretty long comment on one of my videos. So I started typing it out, and it's like, you know what? I don't want to type all this out. Let me just talk about it, and I'll post a video and then link it. So we'll talk about that today. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys, go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream and run my site, all that good stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. And I do have some needs at Black T News. So if you can support, I very much do appreciate it. If you can, I understand people who can't, but if you can, I appreciate it. You guys can support by giving stars on Facebook, and you guys can also do super chats on YouTube. I do read super chats, as long as they're not freaky or something. I will read them, just FYI. And if you're watching back later, you guys can send like stickers or whatever, super thanks as well. Something exciting. I had teased this a while ago, and I meant to have it done sooner, but it's so much work. But I had, I guess about a month ago, recorded a video, because it was before Biden dropped out, and it was after the debate. So maybe not quite a month, but it was a few weeks ago now. Biden, I said that I would do a video debunking the top 10 hoaxes that people made against Trump, and I would do them in order for how much of a damage, how damaging I thought it was to Trump. So I did finish it, and as I was uploading it, I just watched it back one more time to see how it was, and there was a link that I had that was wrong, so I had to I'm gonna have to re-render it, but I'm gonna do that as soon as I'm done talking to you guys today, and then I'm going to go ahead and upload that to YouTube. And so I plan on having it premiere tonight at 9 p.m. So you guys can put that on your little calendar and watch it live or watch it back sometime. It's a little over an hour long, but it debunks 10 different big hoaxes. In my opinion, they were the ones that I thought were the most damaging to you can imagine probably what they are, or some of them what they are. One of them being the Trump-Russia collusion. I think that I guess I won't tell you which order I put them in. Very Fine People hoax made it in there. The Losers and Suckers made it in there. And calling, believing all Mexicans were rapists is in there. And the clip that that originated the sentiment about Trump not liking Mexicans is so silly. It's so silly. I have to show you guys this clip. Let me just see if I can find it really quick, because this clip that I'm about to show you was so controversial back in 2015, 2016, whenever it came out. It was so damning to Trump. And it's so silly looking back on all this. Because what he said about the border was so on point. Let me see. And it's even sillier than the comments that they try to use against him today. I think this is the one.
We beat Mexico at the border. They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Thank you. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop. And it's got to stop fast.
So I don't know how old some of you are watching, and some of you watching might not be from the US, so maybe you didn't look at things too closely. But that clip from Donald Trump spawned this belief that Donald Trump believed all Mexicans are rapists, or all Mexicans are bad, or he doesn't like Mexicans. And, Scott Adams, he wrote Dilbert. He used to talk about how he would hypnotize people with this particular talking point. And he'd be like, well, do you think that he meant like the babies were rapists? And they'd be like, no. Well, do you think that he probably thought the women were rapists? Like, no. Well, so surely you don't think that he probably thinks that like all the men are rapists. Like just unwinding their brains that way. But it's amazing that people were so angry about what he said at that time, and it was so charged. But he was correct. He was correct about the whole thing, saying, well, there's probably people coming from the Middle East. We know there's people coming from all over the world to our border, from China, from different African countries, from all over, from the Middle East. There was a video I played for you guys some time ago that I'm putting in my video that I'm releasing, reminding folks that there was someone, I think he was from Turkey, who paid the cartel like 10 grand to come here. And he was complaining about the lack of security at the border. Now, mind you, he's illegally coming to the country, paid the cartel to come here illegally, and he's complaining about the lack of security on the U.S. border because he's saying some of the people he's traveling with, they don't look right. He thinks that they're bad actors, that these people could be totally unsafe. Now, there's a lot of people who are just many of them are young men who are looking for economic opportunities, and you can't fault someone for wanting to come to the US and to take advantage of all the opportunity that's here. America is a wonderful place, right? You can't fault them for that, but you have to do things the right way, and we need to know who's coming into our country. So Trump was absolutely 100% correct that there's all these people coming from beyond Mexico, all over the world up through our border. And then there's people who are coming who they arrested some people some time ago who had crossed the border, and then they flagged them later or whatever, that they had ties to ISIS. So we don't know who all is across our border, who came through. We don't know who all is in this country. We do know that there are horrific stories about, you know, women and children being killed by these illegal aliens coming through, young children being raped and ravished, and even just people coming up through the border are assaulted, and people are coming with people, kids are coming with folks that they're not related to, and it's just a terrible situation. But people took that video of Donald Trump way back when, and they're like, oh, he hates Mexicans, and they reduced it to such a simplistic, unrealistic, dumb argument so they could just paint him as some kind of immoral monster. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So that's one of the things, just going down memory lane, that's just so remarkable about how folks viewed him. And that's not the only instance. I'll preview something else with the losers and suckers thing, which I didn't think about putting it this way. So this, how I'm about to phrase this, isn't actually in the video, but the information is there. You can, hopefully people come to their own kind of conclusions, but I guess maybe I could have did a voiceover, but it is what it is. So the losers and suckers allegation came first from a paper from the Atlantic. And the Atlantic wrote that when Trump was in France, he was supposed to go to this, a cemetery for American soldiers and for this event. And they said the report was that he didn't go because of the weather. And the article alleged that that wasn't the reason, that the real reason he didn't want to go is because he thinks that the military are losers and suckers, like these people who die, and he didn't want to get his hair messed up and other kind of silly things that they put in the article. Now, it was from jump, people should have known that the article wasn't true, especially how they were phrasing it. There was a lot of unnamed sources, etc. But the main argument is like, oh, we're debunking that he didn't go there for this reason, when there are documents that people got from FOIA requests that the reason why they didn't go was because the weather was bad. Yes, there are other world leaders there, but other world leaders aren't the president of the United States. The weather was bad. They didn't want to come in through the helicopter in the ways that they would have like kept coming through, like, through the streets or whatever. They just didn't see a clear enough kind of path to get him out. So they didn't want him to go. So that's what actually happened. And there's different documents, and I put them in my video, and I put them in I wrote an article debunking the Atlantic story back then. And I included all the stuff in there. Plus there were a bunch of different Trump people who said it didn't happen. John Bolton, which I think sometimes I call him Michael Bolton accidentally, but it's John Bolton. John Bolton used to be in his administration, does not like Trump now, but he wrote about this, period in his book. And he said if Trump had said the losers and suckers comment, he would have wrote a whole entire chapter about it. But his recollection of that day, backed up official reports that the weather was bad. But when he talked about this on Fox News, because he said something about it, and then they came on the show and on Fox to talk about it. He started recounting that day and refuting the reports from the Atlantic, and said that no, we didn't go because of the weather. And he said that it was General Kelly who gave the report about the weather and suggested they said that they shouldn't go. And Trump just took the information kind of, okay, matter of factly, okay, they're saying I shouldn't go. Okay, I'm not going to go. And it was just kind of really that simple. And then he talked about how the media blew up that story, how Trump didn't go to, the grave site. And and John Bolton wrote in his book that Trump was upset about how the media, was portraying them for not going. And Bolton said that Trump unfairly, in his opinion at the time anyway, he was unfair to Kelly, who kind of made the call or whatever, or presented the information and blamed it on him. And because I guess he didn't like this reaction that he got in the media, so he pinned it on Kelly. And so Kelly ended up, resigning, was fired. I don't remember which one, so sometime later, actually it's fairly recently, we found out that Kelly was one of the people who, or at least was the source that created this story. So how can it be that the Atlantic would write a story saying that Trump didn't go to the cemetery because he didn't want to get his hair wet or because he thinks the military is losers and suckers, when Kelly would know for a fact that the reason that they didn't go was because of the weather, because Kelly himself told Trump that they shouldn't go because of the weather. So this whole story was crazy from jump, entirely crazy from jump. So the losers and suckers story is something that I touch on in the video. I also talk about so the Very Fine People hoax, the COVID is a hoax, and other stuff. So anyway, that video is gonna premiere at 9 o'clock. So I hope you guys tune in. I'm sorry that it took so long to get it out, but and hopefully as long as my computer holds up together or whatever, when I re-render it, it should premiere at 9. And if something goes wrong, I'll let you guys know on social media, and then just schedule it for tomorrow. But I should have it out tonight, so I'm looking forward to that being out. I did also have I did change my counter music for the very beginning, and I used my cousin's music, The Devil's a Liar. His name is Gabriel. So you guys can't, if you're interested in that, you want to go back and watch it later, like the countdown. But I'm going to use that going forward, unless there's another song that he wants me to use. But you guys can find that on like the streaming platforms. So anyway, let's talk about the Olympic thing. Again, I don't want to show you guys the images. I don't want to look at them. It's kind of absurd in my brain. But there were drag queens that were at the opening ceremony, and there was people were saying, oh no, it's based off the Greek gods, and like two things can be true at once. I saw this one Christian commentator that I follow who is big into like art history and all sorts of different things. He like compared how the image of them at the table is like the Last Supper, how they're set up and is the same as the Last Supper. And then you had different people, actors on the show, who had different posts about this is the new gay testament and so on. So yes, it's true that they have different gods in there too, but it can still be true that they're pointing toward the Last Supper. So here's beyond the mocking Christianity thing, which has become like the major narrative of all this and being bad, because these organizations don't want people to wear political pins or do things that's just pretty much distracting. So this is an odd thing to do, I think. But I would say put the religious stuff aside. I don't want drag queens doing anything like this ever. I see drag as essentially a minstrel show, but instead of mocking Black people, they're mocking women and femininity. They dress up as these caricatures. Like when I say minstrel show, people would dress up as like Black people. They wear this black face and they'd sing and dance or whatever, but they would be these caricatures of Black people and would be foolish or whatever, doing all kinds of different stuff. And it was, people look back on that stuff and say that stuff is really offensive, and we look back at it now and say that it's offensive, but frankly it was offensive the whole entire time. And these drag queens, these men take on these female forms. They're hyper exaggerated, they're garish and hideous. I find the aesthetics of drag to be revolting, is probably the nicest way I can put it. But I don't, when I would do these drag story time hours and stuff, I'm like, why would you put these adult entertainers and mix them with these children? Like, why can't you find a children's author, like a kid-friendly children's author, or a firefighter, or it's just somebody like that? Okay, why somebody who does this perverse adult entertainment? Why mix them together with the kids? So the whole drag stuff is gross to me. And there was a kid there who was performing with them, and it's just not a good sort of scene. I think if you're going to do kind of a spectacle on the world stage to represent your country, to represent and encourage tourism and all sorts of different things, to uplift such an moral depravity is interesting, and I would say the wrong choice. And especially something that is so pokes such fun at women. And you can say, "Oh no, they love women." That's why they are caricatures. They are caricatures. They could just be cross dressers and but they don't just call themselves dudes who like dresses. They give themselves like female personas and call themselves queens. They're drag queens. So they are supposed to make a mockery out of women, and you know more than just that. And I just don't feel like that is the appropriate message to put on the world stage. I saw a really good thread that was talking about the real problem is that people have too much ego in their art nowadays, and it's become really ugly, and it's just a form of narcissism. And art used to be something like about pointing to beauty and truth, and nowadays people like this, they want to be the art. Like, instead of you letting the art speak for itself and waiting backstage quietly for, like, it to do its thing, and you come and you take your bow, it's about me. I'm rebelling against society. I'm rebelling against this. Like, it's about my expression. And it's just so self-centered. So I don't like drag at all. And I know some people are just like, "Oh, it's wrong if kids do it, but it's fine if adults want to go to drag shows." People liked minstrel shows. We have weird tastes and stuff, I would say. You have really weird taste, and I'm not into it, and I don't like it, and I don't like that it's so mainstream or trying to be mainstream. RuPaul's stuff, which Kamala Harris, by the way, did something with RuPaul the other day. Yeah. Is that the direction that we want to go in this country? I don't think so. I don't like drag, even if it's like Lady Maga. I don't like the drag stuff. I'm sorry. I find it depraved. Sorry. I don't like it. So just in general, if there was no mockery of the Christianity stuff, I wouldn't like that the drag stuff was there at the Olympics. Not my thing, not anything that I think anyone should be proud of. People like their seedy, weirdo kind of stuff, go do it in the darkest, deepest alley in a club somewhere, and not on the world stage at the Olympics. But if that's how you want to present yourself to the world, to let people know the state of the world, I guess that's the message that you wanted to say. As far as the imagery, comparing it with the Last Supper and folks, being upset about that, I'm not surprised, about people mocking. It's so not controversial to mock Christianity. People do it all the time, and artists do it all the time. Whether it's singers or people who do actual art, or these people who teach the most craziest things in their congregations and churches and so on. It's but it shouldn't be surprising, because I mean, Jesus said, "They'll mock me, they'll mock me, they'll mock you." It's not new. It's just people acting out. Now, some people said, "Oh, I know Christianity is true because they don't go after other religions the way they go after Christianity. They think it's real." Mike Cernovich said something along those lines of he used to be religious, but kind of became not religious, and then he just realized that these people, who I think he probably thinks are like demonic, clearly think that Christianity is true. So he's fine there to be some there. And I agree with that sentiment, that I mean, their demons must know it's true. Somebody knows it's true. But I think the real reason why so many people, whether it's these folks who get up and do this stuff, or Satanists who claim they don't actually believe in Satan but will worship Satan, but they're just really kind of uplifting the self, which seems like the most pro-Satan thing you could do. Like, I don't think Satan needs the praise, as long as you're like, "God's not real, I'm gonna worship myself." What's that line? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he doesn't exist. So congrats there. Um, I think the issue, especially if you listen to folks who are like ex evangelicals or folks who just rag on Christianity like all the time with the most extreme bitterness, and they'll say like the reason why we go after Christianity as opposed to other religions is because Christianity is the one who's trying to enforce themselves, or they're the ones always saying stuff and trying to take a position of power in the world, which is ridiculous, because some of those accounts that say stuff like that, I don't see them complaining about climate environmentalist terrorists that are throwing paint on famous works of art, people who are gluing themselves down in intersections, people who are gluing themselves, in Starbucks because they don't like that the vegan milk or something is more expensive than regular milk. So they're protesting and gluing themselves down to the restaurant. There's all kinds of people that annoy and preach their ideology every day beyond Christians. I would say atheists do it a lot online, and there's some people who are more vocal than a lot of Christians that I know about the things that they believe, even though they say it's not a belief, but they sure like evangelizing, you know? Um, so there's people every day trying to make you do something. Like the Democrats, you could say, oh, it's a secular society, blah, 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 don't enforce your religion. And then they'll say stuff like, your business doesn't deserve to exist if they don't pay the minimum wage. Like, we don't care if it's going to make them go out of business. We don't care if you can't afford maternity leave or all these sorts of things. You have to do it, or else you have to, or maybe you shouldn't exist. Like, where are those mentalities coming from? Like, all kinds of people are trying to enforce their worldview. Christians, they're not trying to really enforce their, well, I guess we're trying to debate and maybe in some cases legislate our worldview. But most things people agree with, like, hey, you shouldn't murder people. We don't think you should murder people. Like, we agree with that. Like, we have an objective morality that tells us it's wrong to murder, but we agree we can legislate that. Yeah, human rights, and that's like kill people. So we have to debate, what we believe in the public square, and then we'll legislate from there. But like the most like pro kind of Christian position I can think of that people are offended by, that Christians push for a lot of the times is with abortion. But again, that's like the debate about, hey, is it human? Why does it deserve human rights? And people should have that debate. But there's a ton of people that, like Kamala Harris, when she ran for president 2020, she said that we need to they're like, oh, we're going to do Medicare for all. Like, hey, that'll ruin private healthcare. And she's like, okay. Like, hey, you want to get rid of fracking? Yeah, I want to absolutely. I'm against fracking, which they're trying to say that they're not for now, but she's on video saying I'm absolutely for banning fracking. So we're just going to take you at your words from what you said before, right? That's what we're going to judge you on. I know you want to get elected in this 4 months till, or whatever. Is it like 4 months? Toward the election, a short amount of time to really become a new person, but we got plenty on what you said in the past. So plenty of folks try to push their worldviews that would have major ramifications. But those sorts of folks, they complain about the Christians all day long. So it's not that they don't mind people talking about their worldviews or trying to legislate and etc. Because most of the time that Christians, they're not talking about legislating stuff. They're telling you how you ought to behave. They're telling you that you need to practice self-control. They're saying that you need to crucify your flesh, not someone else come and flog you or something. They're saying you need to crucify your flesh. You need to make a decision to live right, to be careful about who you sleep with, or just, sleep with your spouse, or not sleep around, and, to don't lie, don't steal, don't kill, don't treat others how you would like to be treated, like all this ethical stuff. So they don't like when you say what you ought to do, what we ought to do. Like Pearl got mad at Michael Knowles when he was talking about what men ought to do. And she's, oh, it sounds like you're trying to be God. Like, he's just saying what men ought to do, which people talk about that kind of stuff all the time. But people don't like feeling judged. And then they'll throw out well, doesn't the Bible say not to judge? It doesn't. It tells you how to judge righteously. We make judgments all the time. There's a book called Judges. Like, we can't judge we're not the ultimate judge of like if someone's going to go to heaven or hell or whatever. We can't see all the intricacies of someone's heart or whatever. If I know someone and I haven't seen them in a while and they die, like, how would I know if they gave their heart to Christ? There's things that we can't know, but the Bible also says that a tree by its fruits. So there is some kind of judgment that we can make. So folks don't like being told that they should behave better. They don't like those sorts of expectations from folks. They just want to live their life how they're living it. And they just don't want to be told that they can be better. They don't like that Christianity judges all sin, not just really, really, really worst of the worst, folks. It's every sin that you have. You are guilty for that. Now, you don't have to pay the debt, right? You don't have to pay that debt. Jesus already paid that debt for you if you're willing to just let him take the bill. But in order to do that, you have to admit that you were wrong. And there's people who don't even want to do that because they don't like accountability. So they don't even want to accept that. Some people just can't bring themselves to believe, but I think some people just don't want to really pursue truth when they talk about this stuff. But there's people who are just offended at the idea that they're really that bad and that they need a savior. So they're offended at the idea that they even did anything wrong, that they need a savior to be saved. And they don't want to crucify their flesh and take up their cross. But the beautiful thing about Christianity is that Jesus isn't asking anyone to do anything that he didn't do himself, because he already allowed himself to be crucified and carried his cross and got up on it and died for other people's sins. He was sinless. So the least that we can do is take responsibility for our own selves. We don't even have to he basically already took responsibility for us. But all we have to do is just believe in him. And again, you can you crucify your flesh and try to be better, try to pursue righteousness and holiness to the best of your abilities. We'll stumble, we'll fall, we're human, we're imperfect, right? But we have to have a pursuit of perfection though. So, but people don't like that. So I think at the end of the day, that's why people pick on Christianity so much, because you're not going to say that Christianity is more, forceful or harmful than like Islam, as far as like enforcing its will on people. My first actual reaction to the Paris stuff was, let the Muslims take them. They're coming in, they're immigrating in to Europe. They'll have the country soon. They won't let them do this kind of stuff. That was my first reaction, but obviously not a very Christian reaction. So I had to like tame kind of my flesh, I suppose. And it was, some people are like, oh, the Christians, that they're not respected and they just let this kind of stuff happen. I don't know what people want it to happen instead. Like, are we supposed to take up arms and get whips and other kind of stuff? The world behaving like the world is not I don't know. It's not surprising, I guess. It's not surprising. I think the lack of influence of the church is, I guess you could say, is evident that since this kind of thing happened because they didn't have enough respect to not do it. But at the same time, who they resent and triggers their demons. So maybe, maybe it is kind of a better sign. I don't know. I would just say, if you're upset about it, you need to influence people to do righteousness. So so this sort of thing couldn't happen in this culture. And Elon Musk tweeted out different stuff, and he was talking about how Christianity is too passive, it's gonna die. And Ali Stuckley said it's Christianity isn't going to ever die. Like the church actually grows with persecution, actually. So no, we won't go anywhere. But I do think it's funny that and I mentioned this I think last week, because Elon Musk said that he was a cultural Christian. He likes the virtues of Christianity, but he himself isn't really like a practicing, Christian, as far as, trying to live a real Christian life. And so if you don't want to live that life, you just expect everyone else to live that life and push those virtues without actually being Christian. Because at the end of the day, this whole world will pass away. And being a cultural Christian doesn't save you from condemnation. And I don't think at the end of the day, while people choose to live immoral lifestyles themselves, and I don't know, I mean, I know Elon's got a bunch of kids and fooled around with Amber Heard, I guess, and I don't know if that deep, but I just mostly know Elon for his technological accomplishments and things that he posts online, I guess, and free speech and politics and stuff like that. But you can't just depend on everyone else to save the other Christians who are keeping the good book to save the world, and then be upset when you find that they're thinning out. Like, when are you going to jump into the fray and be part of the army? So it's so very nice that people like cultural Christians, but that's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Anyway, let's move on. So Joe Biden is making some changes to the Supreme Court. I'm not surprised. He said he would. Well, he said he would suggest, which people suspected when he started pitching this stuff, that this was a pitch to try to keep his base happy so they wouldn't push him out. Which, by the way, there is a rumor in a report that they were able to push Biden out because Kamala was going to do the 25th Amendment. I don't know if that's the case. I got to do a little more research on that, but I just thought that was interesting because he did not want to go. We didn't want to go. Anyway, he wants to make these changes to the Supreme Court, and Kamala Harris agreed with it. And so they want to do term limits. They want to do different ethic, restrictions on them as well. And the question is, how come the things that they want to impose on the Supreme Court, they don't want to impose across the board? Biden once said that, they want to change things for as far as the presidential immunity. And I know they're saying that because they don't like Trump, right? And they're mad about the ruling concerning Trump because they wanted, their indictments against Trump and the prosecutions against Trump to go forward, and for, him to be convicted and go to jail and all that stuff. But if they really think that the presidents shouldn't have immunity for crimes, which I'm going to assume murder is one of them, then Joe Biden should. What is stopping Joe Biden from saying, hey, Justice Department, we droned some kids, we droned an aid worker, and no one was accountable for that, but I was commander in chief, so go ahead and prosecute me. I'm going to step down so you guys can arrest me, and I'm not going to invoke any kind of presidential immunity. Just take me right to jail. How come Joe Biden doesn't do that? How come he doesn't say, you know what, Obama droned some folks at a wedding? We want to do some court reform. We don't think presidents should get immunity from the decisions like this, from things that they do. So you know what? we're both going to take one for the team. And please don't use this defense of presidential immunity. Just take us right to jail. Right to jail. Just do it. How come they don't do things like that? Because this is about hating Trump. It's not about doing the right thing. Someone said they don't want to follow the Constitution. Yep, that's true. The Democrats, they talk about the court. They don't like the court because the court is conservative. And I can understand people not liking a conservative majority. And there was one person who made a comment on TikTok, one of my TikTok videos, about not wanting the Supreme Court to be too conservative. I'm like, okay, but you have to look at how these people are ideologically choosing their rulings, or, writing the rulings and stuff. So the conservatives, or the people who are who are really deep into looking at the text of the Constitution, they're looking at it and saying, this is what the founders intended, the people who wrote it intended. This is what the intention of the laws. This is what the law says. So we're going to make the ruling this way based on what it is. And the liberals want justices who are going to say, okay, this Constitution is a living document, and this stuff about right to bear arms, for example, it's just crazy to think that applies to AR-15s. It's crazy that these guns that are so insane today, that these people would have thought that such things could exist, and we have to rewrite not to rewrite the Constitution, but we have to make a ruling to reread things into the Constitution to limit people's rights to firearms, because this is ridiculous. Mind you, the person Biden is, wants to reform the court, and he obviously wants Kamala Harris to win at this point. Kamala Harris believes in mandatory buybacks. That's something that she said in the past. She believes in instituting executive orders, including on things like AR-15s. And when Joe Biden, you had said a comment like, you can't just do that with executive orders, she laughed at him and said, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, how about yes, we can? And just started laughing. It's so unserious. So that's Kamala Harris. These people don't care about your constitutional rights. They want justices who will legislate from the bench. Because if they start campaigning on, hey, I want to take your freaking guns away, then you have people on both sides of the aisle like, wait a second, I may be a Democrat, but I like to go to the range and pew, 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 pew. So I can't just get with you on that, Kamala. I don't think so. Like, if the Democrats started campaigning hard on their gun, how they really feel about firearms, they're not going to win on that. So they have to kind of mask it, but they're never going to get kind of the votes to get to where they need to be. Probably doesn't matter how many tragedies there are. You're not going to convince everybody to just get rid of all their guns, or to be like, yeah, we should do a mandatory buyback. So they want to have some kind of majority in the court that will weaken the Constitution and the Second Amendment. And that's just an example of what they want. They want a court that will legislate from the bench. So if you actually care about the Constitution, perhaps you should care about people who are originalists and actually care about what it says and what it means. Because the framers of the Constitution are a lot smarter than a lot of the folks we got in government now. And it's not like they couldn't perceive that the principles of the document would still apply later. And there were like high capacity firearms at the time. People, they wrote it, the cannons were covered under the Constitution. Because you have people who are asking like, hey, can we fire these cannons? There's these pirates that we're dealing with. Like, yeah, that's why you wrote the Second Amendment. So the idea that it wouldn't cover something like an AR-15 just isn't true. It's like thinking that your cell phone isn't covered under the First Amendment or something, or me writing on my computer a book or something like that kind of stuff isn't covered under the First Amendment because technology changes. What is the principle of it? So that's why they want these different reforms. The reason why the justices have lifetime appointments is because we don't want the justices to be that they have to be voted and other stuff like that is because you want to keep them away from the political landscape as much as possible to limit sort of in kind of influence of our politics as much as possible. And the Democrats are all about politics with this stuff. Are all of that. That's why they keep coming after Clarence Thomas. Like, people are mad at Clarence Thomas and think that he's corrupt because he rode on a friend's plane or boat and other stuff like that. And they're saying, oh, those things should have been reported. How dare he? He literally didn't have to report those things. That was something, there was like a change that they made recently. And now they're retroactively looking at stuff that he already did and saying he's corrupt because he didn't report these things when he didn't have to. So they started this new story around Clarence Thomas, and they came for him, and they're mad about Alito because his wife had a tiff with the neighbors and hung a flag upside down or something, and so they're trying to get rid of them when there's certain things that they could look at the other liberal justices for similar sorts of things, but they want to get rid of them because they want a majority court that's going to just rip up the Constitution. That's what they want. Can you really name an entire ruling that Clarence Thomas wrote about or agreed with that he wouldn't have gone that way, voted that way, if he didn't ride on a friend's airplane or something? Which ruling do you think he legitimately didn't go the way that he would have gone? How do you think he's influenced? Do you think he's still some kind of commie, some radical Marxist like he was in his heyday? Do you think he's still that person that the conservative and limited government approach that he has as his philosophy isn't really so? Do you think that's just a facade so he could be called an Uncle Tom nonstop, but get rides on airplanes, as if liberal justices don't have go to parties or have favors or friends and all sorts of different stuff? Stop it. Guy Benson reported that statement from Leonard Leo regarding President Biden's Supreme Court announcement endorsed by Kamala Harris. No conservative justice has made any decision in any big case that surprised anyone. So let's stop pretending this is about undue influence. It's about Democrats destroying a court they don't agree with, period. And that's not the end of the statement, but that's true. That is true. It's not about corruption. It's not about corruption at all. If President Biden and the Democrats were truly serious about the ethics reform, then they would ban all gifts and hospitality of any kind to any public official in any branch of government, starting with Congress, where the real corruption is. They would close all of the loopholes that allow members to travel on private jets to fancy hotels and restaurants. With respect to judges, they would include the things where influence peddling is most present and dangerous, and that's when the liberal justices rub shoulders with influencers at places like law schools, bar associations, progressive think tanks, and their conferences and other groups and events funded by the left-wing billionaires, where they support real vested interests in the work of the court. Let me be clear. If Democrats want to adopt an across-the-board ethics ban for all branches, I am in favor of that. No jets, no meals, no speaking honorariums, no gifts for anyone from any reason in any branch, starting with Congress, until they support that. That's all. Let's all be honest about what this is: a campaign to destroy a court that they disagree with, period. That's what it is, guys. That's what it is. Let's see. Let's read what Harris wrote. In course of our nation's history, trust in the Supreme Court of the United States has been critical to achieving equal justice under the law, which she doesn't believe in because she doesn't want that for the unborn. But anyway, President Biden and I strongly believe that American people, and they don't believe in neutral race policies about this stuff either. Well, I thought about a different case, a court case that they ruled that Democrats were mad about, that basically applied law equally, and they were all mad. But I'll keep reading. President Biden and I strongly believe that the American people must have confidence in the Supreme Court. Yet today, there is a clear crisis of confidence facing the Supreme Court, as its fairness has been called into question after numerous ethics scandals, decision after decision overturning long-standing precedent. That is why President Biden and I are calling on Congress to pass important reforms, from imposing term limits for justices' active service to requiring justices to comply with binding ethics rules, just like every other federal judge. And finally, in our democracy, no one should be above the law. So we must ensure that no former president has immunity for crimes committed while in the White House. These popular reforms will help restore confidence in the court, strengthen our democracy, and ensure no one is above the law. So I mean, they kind of like gave the game away though. Like, they're mad about stuff, about long precedent stuff being overturned, you know? So they want to reform the court. Maybe, just maybe, Roe v. Wade, for example, was a trash ruling. Even Ginsburg, who wants a right to abortion for women, knew that it kind of sucked. And there are issues with it. And that's why people always had to be afraid of it being overturned. Things get overturned. Bad legal rulings get overturned. No one's crying because Dred Scott isn't upheld today. No one's crying over that. But they're mad because there is a majority, conservative majority. Thank God. Thank God there's a conservative majority. Like, during COVID, New York, for example, was clearly treating churches different than other businesses. And they said that churches had like a strict minimum on how many people they could come in the church. Even if like it was a big church and stuff, like the metric for how they decided didn't make sense. But they allowed like stores to have like a different metric as far as what kind of the amount of people that they could come in and stuff. So the churches sued. And so New York tried to drop the case so it wouldn't go to the Supreme Court. And then they're just like, no, we're going to hear the case because you guys, if we just drop it, you could just bring it up again. So no, we're going to go all the way to the finish line. And the Supreme Court was like, I think Gorsuch wrote the ruling. And like, you can't treat bike stores differently than you do these churches. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And you're clearly treating these churches unfairly. And that should have been like a simple, like 9-0 ruling. It was a clear violation of their First Amendment rights. Clear violation. And I think the ruling was like 5-4 or something like that. It was like stupid close. It was really close. So when I saw that, I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, Roe v. Wade's not the only thing that happened. Like, there's other cases where I'm so glad that there's a, conservative majority, because these people are insane. These people are insane. And they have real world repercussions. And something that they're doing, Josh Shapiro, who I've mentioned and said that, he's like on the Democrats bench for like who could be president, but he's out here lying. He's still a rat, people might view him as a moderate, but he's out here telling lies. So he was stomping for Kamala, and he mentioned that Republicans wanted to pack the court. People are changing. People know that packing the court is a bad thing. So now they're trying to change the meaning of pack the court. So they think that just having a majority of conservatives on there is packing the court. Packing the court means that you want to expand the number of justices on there so you can just put in more liberal justices. That's what the Democrats want to do. That's what they've been, not all of them. Like, Joe Biden was asked about it when he was running, and he wouldn't say definitively that was a stupid idea, because maybe he was open to it, but he definitely didn't want to upset the voters on his side, and he didn't want to upset the voters on the other side who knew that that was a really dumb idea. So he wouldn't talk about it, even though like reporters would push and like this is like the number one question that people are asking. And he's like, well, I'm not gonna, basically give Trump something else to talk about. So he just refused to answer the question. And he let them know, I'm not answering the question because I don't want you guys to turn the conversation back on me. Like and the press were just like, okay, oh, that makes sense. And just let it go. But they're literally trying to change the definition of packing courts and say that Republicans are guilty of it. Just like they're trying to, change the fact that Kamala Harris was the border czar. She wasn't over the border. She was over enough of it. Not the whole thing, obviously. Not the whole thing, obviously. But they're trying to minimize what her role was, which I thought they were kind of setting her up to fail from get-go. But you can't just memory hole everything with Kamala Harris. There's too much video. There's too much video. So trying to change the court because you don't like the rulings that the court is making is just this sort of garbage that they accuse Trump of being, totalitarian. It's really crazy. And then there's so many people who just go along with it and nod their heads. Why can't you see that you're the threat to democracy when you do this kind of stuff? Which we're not a democracy, but like, how can you not see? How can you not see that you're the problem? Anyway, I'm sure we'll continue to talk about this up in the upcoming week. But they are not the good guys here, man. They're certainly not. Another thing I want to talk about, I had posted this video on TikTok and I posted a short of it. So you guys are going to see like a little bit of the longer version that I posted. I'll tell you guys where I ended it though. And someone left a comment. It was quite long and I started like typing out a response. But I thought it was getting kind of long. So I didn't like I'm just going to do a video reply. So I'm going to show you guys this video and then I'll start reading this comment. Now, I haven't read the whole entire comment, so some of it was kind of going to be a live react because I'm like, man, this is a really long post. So I'll just end up like posting this and linking it to this lady. So anyway, I posted this video on TikTok a few days ago. There's a YouTube short of it. So this is about maybe 2 minutes, 25 seconds. The YouTube short is obviously just a minute. So just about the first minute is what's actually on YouTube. So this idea that no one's right to life, can come at the expense of using one's body against their will is argued in A Defense of Abortion, and that's where the famous violinist argument comes up. But the big problem with that is just not real in the real world. For example, there's this Ohio mom who got a life sentence because she left her 16-month child alone for 10 days. Now, she didn't purposely remove nutrients from her child. She didn't purposely suffocate them. She didn't purposely rip the arms and legs off from her daughter. She didn't purposely poison her. She just refused care. She said, I don't want to take care of you. I'm not going to use my body to do that. And we are punishing her for not providing care because that was her parental obligation. Very interesting how we're all on the same page about neglect if it's outside of the womb, but if the baby's inside of the womb, then we're okay with premeditated homicide. So that's where it stopped on the YouTube short. So that part is the only part that this commenter saw, unless she saw it on TikTok, but I doubt it. So that's all that the commenter, I'm going to read her comment and reply to it. But that's all she saw. You're going to say, well, she could have transferred parental obligation. She's left her baby before with other folks, and I guess no one was biting. But even the idea that she has to transfer the obligation still infers that she has a duty to make sure that that child is cared for. Now, you may say that these scenarios are different. It's very different when a child is in your womb versus outside. And like, yeah, you can hear them cry, you can smell their pee and their poop, and it's a far greater effort to feed them and clothe them, and they need more of your time, etc., etc. But regardless of how you want to list the differences, the principle doesn't hold up. The fact that you may not want to do something, but you still have an obligation to use your body to take care of your offspring. So the principle that you're arguing here doesn't hold up, and neither does Judith Jarvis Thompson's, essay either. But to those of you who will say only the mother can take care of a baby in a pregnancy, I think it's really grotesque that the ethic is if the child needs their mother, then they don't deserve to be protected against violence. That seems problematic to me. So that's a TikTok there. And again, she only saw the first minute. So okay, so let's go through this comment. It's quite long. Kudos to she wrote a freaking essay. Okay. Okay. This is Elisha Williams, 5460. I have a few problems with this argument. One, the body will sometimes naturally reabsorb or abort fetuses without the parent having to do anything. So this argument that aborting a fetus is like killing a child through neglect is not at all similar. Abortion can be a part of a natural process. Neglect is a calculated move. Yeah, and so is an induced abortion. That is a calculated move. When people talk about abortion being bad, let's not be dense. You know that we're talking about an induced abortion. A natural abortion or spontaneous abortion is called a miscarriage. We are, not talking about miscarriages. I don't have a problem. Well, it's sad, but in general, there's nothing immoral about living your life and it coming to its natural conclusion. So if your life, the natural conclusion concludes within the womb, and you have a woman has a miscarriage, that is obviously tragic and sad. But that is the natural beginning and end of that fetus's life for whatever reason. Maybe something was wrong with it. Maybe something was wrong with the mom's body. I don't know. Doctors can try to sort that out. But induced abortion is a calculated move. It is a premeditated homicide. And that is obviously the issue that people have, especially if it is an elective abortion. So point number one isn't that great. Point number two, you bring up the fact that parents will horribly neglect their children and abuse them, but don't realize the hypocrisy of still wanting these unwanted children to be born. I don't see how it's hypocritical to want children to not be purposely killed. And I don't want them to be neglected at all. And I'm making the case that we think that the mother who neglected her child should go to jail. And I think that abortion should be criminalized, frankly. But so there's no hypocrisy there. I don't think that you should be allowed to neglect your child to this degree where they will be killed. I'm not a hypocrite here. I'm explaining that there's a hypocrisy for the people who think that the parental obligation doesn't exist in the womb, but they think that the parental obligation exists outside of the womb, when the argument is, the original comment that I replied to was about how no one should be able to use your body without your consent or whatever to stay alive. And that is basically the argument in Judith Jarvis Thompson's A Defense of Abortion, where the violinist analogy is from. And I did write a paper, I haven't published it yet, about why all the ways that argument doesn't make sense. But we do expect people to take care of folks outside of the womb with their bodies, and to even punish them even if they don't want to. It just isn't the same. It's just like this special instance with abortion. You think people should be able to get away with it. So no, it's not hypocrisy. I'm sure if given the choice between being aborted versus starving and sitting in your own filth until you die, you would choose the former over the latter. Do you not know how abortions are done through the pill? The pill literally does starve you to death. It blocks off the nutrients and the oxygen, and you suffocate and starve to death. That is the method of the abortion pill. That's how 2/3 of aborted children die. The other ways are through dismemberment. You could by like sucking them through the tube thing, by the vacuum, or if it's a later one, ripping them apart and taking out their limbs and stuff. You could poison them through the like a lethal injection if it's a really late in the abortion, where and the later it gets, the more days it takes. But yeah, this is interesting. It's like, do you actually know how these abortions are done? Aren't in the financial, emotional, or psychological position to care for the child, and stopping them from doing what's necessary on our high horse or moral superiority is just going to make use that stories like this are more common. So she doesn't know if this woman wants. This is what's so crazy to me about the argument that, oh, well, we should just let them abort, or more stress that these people think that women who have abortions are more prone to be abusive. Now you can say that the abortion is pretty abusive, but so do you think if these women who would consider abortion or would have abortions, so I mean, people sometimes say if you get an abortion you should be forced to be sterilized. I don't think we should do that, but if you really think that these people who would consider abortion would harm their kids, like, watch out for these folks. But most people, if you deny them an abortion, the Turnaway study that the media likes to use all the time, if a woman is denied an abortion, she will not 96% of women will be happy they did not kill their child and they were formed bonds, but are glad that they let them live and they're out somewhere in the world living. Maybe they may be a little sad, but they're still happy that they didn't kill them. But most women will just be glad that they didn't kill their kids. So this is a, I can understand why they may think this thing that they're saying, and people repeat it all the time, but the data doesn't really, I haven't seen data to support that. And some of these parents who are neglectful of their children, they may be women who would never consider having an abortion. They might be people who think it's so wrong to do that, would never think about that, would never want to put their body through that, and they still have their baby and they neglect them. So this ideology wouldn't necessarily save any more kids. And this women abort because of financial, emotional. When people bring these things up, they're not good reasons to kill your kids. Like, if you wouldn't kill your 2-year-old for the same reason, it's not a good reason to kill your baby in the womb for the same reason, because it's the same person. So whatever reason you have for having an abortion, ask yourself, would you kill a 2-year-old for the same reason? Because if not, hopefully you wouldn't. It's absolutely not a justifiable reason, okay? The only reason why you think you can get away with it is because it's in your body. That's the flex you have over it. Oh, it's in you, so I get to do whatever I want. But that doesn't mean your reasons are just or moral or sane. So if you think that, you can kill your kid because of financial difficulty, I grew up with some financial difficulty. I deserve protection, equal protection under the law, even though I had tough times. I'm not less of a human being. So when you guys just like, well, what about finances? You sound like a monster. I'm sorry. Just think about it. Just think about it. That is not a good reason to kill your child. And if you think it is, would you kill a 2-year-old for the same reason? Number 3, prosecuting people who get abortions also means that in the case of life-risking pregnancies, developmental health issues in which the body will suffer and die as soon as born, rape, underprivileged rape, and other such nuanced cases that people will have the choice between going to jail or getting the help they need, while you're protecting unborn fetuses who haven't even developed a nervous system to feel pain with or a brain to receive the signals, who's protecting the fully formed 12-year-old who's been through the trauma of rape and now by your standards must go through the trauma of birth, versus what, the trauma of an abortion. So I don't appreciate people. I don't mind talking about the hard cases. I have a TikTok on here. I haven't posted on YouTube, but I have a TikTok on here replying about the case of a 12-year-old getting pregnant. Okay, I will talk about these really hard cases. I don't mind. Some people just want to avoid them because they're like the less than 1%. And they just like, well, let's talk about the main ones. I don't mind talking about the hard cases. I don't. But what I do mind is that people will use these circumstances to justify all the other reasons why women want abortions. This person already said that she already thinks it's okay that women should be able to get abortions for financial reasons. You can't afford the baby, you got a new job or whatever. Okay, you can off your baby. So I don't appreciate you bringing up a 12-year-old getting sexually assaulted and impregnated to try to justify your worldview. I don't appreciate that. Because most people actually would grant that exception. I think it's inconsistent to grant that exception, because if it's a human baby and it's wrong to kill babies, that child, we should not discriminate against them and say that they should not be protected from violence. And my position is that if they can both live, they both should live. I'm not going to take too much time on that explanation, but like once the baby exists, it exists. And once it exists, it's going to be birthed. Either you can give birth to a live child or a dead one. Abortion is a forced birth to a dead baby. So the decision we have to make as a society is, are we going to love the mother and that child, or are we going to help that mother unalive her child? Are we going to show more compassion, respect, and dignity and rights to the rapist than we would to that innocent child? Because that is what we're saying. Because that rapist will get due process. He'll have to stand trial. He's most likely not going to be executed. Maybe if he lives in Florida, but if you live in someplace like, California or somewhere, you might be able to say that you're a woman, identify as a woman, and be in a woman's prison and live kind of cushy in there. So to say that we can execute a child for a crime they did not commit, I'm not comfortable with that. Now, in the cases of like health, every single legislation in every state dealing with abortion has exceptions for the mother's life. So it's set that aside. So trying to use these, what she calls nuanced cases, when the truth is that she thinks women should be able to abort for any reason. And frankly, this doesn't have much to do with the original argument. This seems like we're kind of going off topic from the parental obligation. No one can use your body without your no one's right to life includes using your body argument. It seems like we're going far, far, far away from it. Let me keep reading. She said, while you're protecting unborn fetuses who haven't even developed a nervous system to feel pain with a brain or to receive the signals. Okay, so the brain develops very early, like week 5, 6, something like that. We don't know exactly when pain begins, but let me just say that, did you know in the 80s we were still doing surgeries on babies and I don't mean in the womb, I mean like babies outside of the womb, without anesthesia because doctors didn't think that they felt pain? Now, there was evidence to the contrary. They're just kind of really slow to correct that. And when parents found out that doctors were operating on their babies who were in pain without any kind of anesthesia, parents were rightfully upset about it. And so we changed our ethics and our practices around surgery, but there's things that we're so certain of that we turn out to be dead wrong about. So maybe they can't process, the pain until a certain point. But if you're talking about like consciousness and stuff, we don't know exactly what sparks it. We're not sure is the truth about it. So why don't we err on the side of caution? But even if you can't feel pain, like that doesn't just because you can't feel pain doesn't make it moral if someone unalived you. That's not what makes murder wrong. If someone killed you quick and painlessly and you were unaware of your death and you didn't feel it, would that make it okay? Or is it wrong that someone deprived you of your life? I think it's wrong that someone deprived you of your life. And I don't even think I mentioned, like, I think it's wrong to have an abortion at any point in time in your pregnancy, but I don't think in that video I mentioned what week. So maybe we are talking about late term. I don't think I mentioned it, but you know, so saying you're fighting for them and they don't even have a brain, like, are you talking about like the moment they were they're conceived? Or the woman who medically can survive a pregnancy, risking her life and health to bring an unwanted child into the world, or a crack addicted sex worker who will have to push the baby out in a filthy bathroom because she lacks the proper support and financial stability to go to a hospital. I know someone who's very grateful that the law in Michigan used to be that you couldn't have an abortion, and he has his life because his crack addicted mother, or drug addicted mother couldn't have an abortion. And he's very grateful for his life, and he's a really good man. So you can't just have this conversation and just forget that there's we're talking about killing human beings. If they both can live, they both should live. I don't think people should do crack. I don't think people should. I'm not really into drugs at all, like even alcohol. But I don't think people should do drugs. I don't think people should be sexually assaulting people. I don't think people should be having sex outside of marriage. There's lots of things I don't think that people should do. But the truth is, if there's a baby that exists, we shouldn't be like, oh, the solution is to unalive them. And even saying that there's unwanted children, that's not even true, because there's like 2 million parents like waiting to adopt. There's 2 million parents that are waiting to adopt. So there's a pair of open arms somewhere. This idea that there's just a bunch of unwanted kids. Maybe you don't want them, and maybe they're inconvenient for you. Maybe you don't like thinking about them, and you wish they weren't alive. But that doesn't mean that someone wouldn't take them in and give them all the love and the care in the world. Contraceptive can literally cause heart attacks, blood clots, and tons of other side effects that people just ignore to conveniently make this argument. Wait a second. I skipped some. They're all going to serve the same amount of years in prison for simply owning a uterus because nope. I don't believe in that's not true, because again, contraceptive is not freely available or always an option. The best contraceptive is free, man. There's always abstinence. That's always not the case, because someone could be sexually assaulted, but most cases that is an option. Contraceptive can literally cause heart attacks, blood clots, and tons of other side effects. So now it's just like, not everyone can have contraceptives, and not everyone will use contraceptives. So it's just kind of like they just really poured their heart out in this whole argument. There's still so much more. No, like, people would look at the facts of the case and see if it needs to proceed. If someone can't get to a hospital and the child dies, that's not the same thing as let me tear them apart limb from limb. That's really not the same thing. So no, not the same. Number 4, you'll find that most people who were born now, if the baby, but we would believe if that woman had that baby and just left that baby on the bathroom floor or tossed it in a dumpster, we would charge that person. Would we not? So, yeah, don't do bad things purposely to babies. Number 4, you'll find that most people who were born into situations in which abortion could have been used to prevent their existence would have preferred to been aborted. I think people who say such things like that really do need some kind of help, some kind of counseling, Jesus, go to church. Because if you say things like you would rather be aborted, I'm going to assume that means that you're suicidal and you like you're self-harming or don't want to be here. Now, that you have the I'm glad that you're here if you ever think this thought or say such things. And you're apparently glad to be here because you are here. You're exercising your right to life. And even, I don't even know how much I can say on this topic because social media be so kind of funny about talking about this kind of topic. But if you say that you would rather be aborted, that's not even the same thing as I wish I didn't exist. It's saying I wish my mother had murdered me. Why would you do that? You need help. You need psychological. It breaks my heart when I hear people say this. But they still choose to exercise the right to life. As Ronald Reagan once said, everyone who's for abortion has already been born. So it's easy to say that while you're still exercising your right to life. Oh, and she said, me included. Sweetheart, you need some help. You need some help. No amount of it's for the good of the baby can undo years of abuse and neglect in the care of the unfit parents. You are literally advocating for those children to suffer more because it's further down the line. It's okay. She loved her life enough to write this essay. She loved her life enough to write this essay. If you didn't care about your life, would you be writing an essay this long on somebody's YouTube comment? My gosh. Nobody deserves to be born into and forced to live in unfit conditions. This isn't a prime time movie. Nobody is coming to save them. Pro-life will advocate for their birth and then leave them to suffer horrible abuses in the foster care system and at home. You are not saving anyone. You're creating more pain. If you are in the foster care system, that is different than the adoption system. If you are pregnant and you don't want your baby, you can have an adoption plan and someone will adopt your baby. Someone will adopt your baby. If you are in the foster care, maybe you were in a bad kind of parental situation and you had to be removed and you are now a ward of the state, but their goal is to reunify you with your family. In some cases, they can't reunite you and you may be adopted out, or sometimes kids aren't adopted out and they go through the system and then they become, they turn 18 or whatever. But this isn't the same thing. People confuse these things all the time. I don't want any child to be unloved or abused or in any side of unfit conditions. But when you make this sort of argument as if these children's lives are so terrible, then why don't you advocate for them to be killed? Like, why are you so gung-ho on killing children based off of hypothetical things that could happen, but you don't advocate that they should be killed based off of things that we know are horrible that's happening to them? There's a question for you. Number 5, people thinking that banning abortion will do anything. It won't. As we saw in the 1950s, when abortion was illegal and people had to find other ways to get them, it just led to more deaths. That's not true. Mothers with botched abortions who would die from their babies in pool of their own blood. You just increase the number of backyard abortions and unsafe abortions efforts and criminalize doctors who would prefer these people to not do it in unsafe conditions. Exactly who is being saved. This isn't true. And like, I think the Planned Parenthood former president said something along that effect, but you can find, I think the PolitiFact or Washington Post whoever gives Pinocchios said it's not true. The reason why more women would die in illegal abortions is because we just didn't have certain medical technology that we had back in the day. But back alley abortions just means that you're still doing it in a clinic. You're just going to a back alley of the abortion clinic, and the same amount of women who would die from legal abortions and legal abortions was virtually the same. So all these women dying from unsafe abortions, it's really not going to happen. I think, again, women who are denied an abortion usually have their children and they're very glad that they didn't kill them. That's the data. You go look up the Turnaway study. That's the data. So I also think that if there's that many women who would risk hurting themselves because they don't want to have the baby, I think that makes abortion super immoral, because if they're really that mentally unwell that they're willing to risk their lives, why wouldn't we send them to some kind of help as opposed to sending them to some kind of butcher who profits off of murdering their child? It just kind of seems like we're not really properly caring for these women. And when people try to help these women or have pregnancy crisis centers or whatever, you have Democrat governors who literally try to defund them or try to come against them and try to stop people from seeking ways to not kill their baby. And this idea that pro-life people don't care about there was a movie that just came out, Daily Wire helped to put out, about a church community that adopted a bunch of kids out of foster care. Most people who adopt are Christian, and most people who do the foster care stuff are Christians. And then Christians do missionary trips. They are the biggest givers. They found hospitals, and like there's a movie, Sister Cabrini, that came out, or is it Cabrini? Like, Christians are very charitable. It's just slander to believe that these pro-life people don't care about people after they're born and won't take care of these folks. It's just a delusion that's, I think, is just coming from a place of hurt, wherever this hurt is coming from this person, that needs, we already established that they need to get help. Number 6, don't even get me started on the hopes for the foster care system or adoption to compensate for the abortion numbers. How many? Oh, and by the way, abortion, banning abortion. I don't think banning abortion will stop abortion. I think the number will go down, certainly. But that, if you criminalize abortion, the numbers certainly will go down. If you're putting doctors in jail, and I don't think it should just be the doctors. I have a more abolitionist view of this myself. And if you've had an abortion, you've had a change of heart, like, I'm not talking about retroactively punishing women for having them, but there's a lot of women who've gone through a lot of pain and have been asked the question, well, if this would have been illegal and you could have been in jail, would you have had the abortion? They would say no. So that would have deterred them from doing something that really haunts them. So I absolutely think there will be less abortions, and you don't have data to show that if we ban abortion and criminalize it, that it won't save millions of babies. If you have some data, you can show me. I don't think you do. So yeah, I certainly believe that it'll lessen abortion, but it's not just about ending the abortion. We want abortion to end because it's unjust, but it's also unjust to harm these innocent children, and that's why we also need justice as well. So don't even get me started. Number 6, don't even get me started on the hopes for the foster care or adoption to compensate the abortion numbers. How many books do people abused in the foster care system have to write? How many news articles or how many reports before people see the foster care is not the same thing? See, the system is unsafe, money hungry scheme that it is. You're not sending them to better conditions. They are being abused and trafficked by strangers instead of their own family. For every success story of foster placement, there's about 1 million horrible conditions in which kids just end up on the streets. And for the 1 or 2 families that want to adopt, they have to wait, because the reality is everyone wants newborns and no one wants kids or teens, and no one wants to be wants disabled kids either. So what is the argument here? If foster care can't be, like, it's just terrible, you don't want it to exist, these kids are in bad conditions. Foster care, again, they're children who are basically confiscated from bad situations, and they're put into these other homes, usually temporarily. I think the average time is like maybe 2 years before they're like reunified with their families. If you're saying that it's just awful, and for these kids, these are kids who are already born. So what do you want to do? Just line them up and just kill them? Is that what your argument is? Because parents who might have considered abortion, who might be stopped having abortion, that doesn't equate to these kids would end up in foster care. That doesn't mean that. So all this stuff about foster care is way off base from the original argument that I suggested in my video. Number 7, also people who hook up a lot don't get abortions. People who can afford kids don't get abortions. Normal everyday people, that's not true. Normal everyday middle class people are regularly not the people who get abortions. It's the lower class who can't afford contraceptive or aren't educated enough on it. It's teen kids who don't yet understand the weight of their mistakes. You want someone who hasn't even developed their frontal cortex and can't reason properly to take care of the kid. So this isn't true. The majority of abortions, like 86% of abortions, are from unmarried people. So they are people, you know, maybe not randomly always hooking up, but they're people who aren't married. So out there fornicating. And the majority of abortions take place from women who are aged 20 to 40. It's like teenagers, like 18-year-olds, whatever, they may be wanting abortions, getting abortions, but the bulk of abortions are women like 20 to 40. That's the bulk of them. They're women who absolutely know how babies are made, where they come from. You know, some of these women have multiple abortions. Some of them have abortions after carrying several children to term. So this is also like a eugenics argument. Like, so what, you just really believe that these low income people should be killing their kids, aborting their kids? People with money have abortions. That's silly. People may say that they want abortions for financial reasons. That doesn't mean that they are, you know, just below the poverty line. And when you and you say these people are uneducated and that's why they're having abortions. So the disproportionate amount of people who are having abortions are Black people. So what are you saying here? What are you saying here? Do you think people of color are just aren't educated enough about contraceptives? Like they don't know? That's what they're just ignorant. That's why they're having abortions and having babies? Because you think Black people are stupid? Is that what that is? Okay, why not put your infinite efforts towards saving the children that are already here? Why don't you? Why don't you? That's a question. All you people up in my grill, like, the reason, when you say they're already here, who are you killing? Who are you aborting if they're not here? Where are they? What kind of magical pocket universe exists inside your uterus? Where is the baby from? If it's not here, how can you kill it? Where are the forceps reaching into? What kind of black hole? Like, what kind of Star Trek device, Stargate, are we talking about if the baby isn't here when you kill it in the womb? Of course, the baby's already here. So here's the deal. You have to convince me that it's not alive if you want me not to care. Because I see it as murder. We can call it premeditated homicide if that'll make you feel better. But I think it's murder, okay? So unless you can convince me that they're not a human being, unless you can convince me that I wasn't human and alive in my mother's womb, I'm going to say that it's wrong to have abortions, induced abortions, okay? Especially elective induced abortions. I'm going to say that's wrong. I'm going to say it's wrong to kill them then. It's wrong to kill them at 2 years old, at 4 years old, at 18 years old, at, you know, etc., etc. I'm going to say that's wrong to unjustly unalive someone. You have to make the case why they're not human. That's how you win the argument. They're not human and not alive. Or you can make the argument why the woman deserves the special murder right. But to be like, why don't you just care about what people who are already here? I do. Thank you. Congratulations. You can go home. But why don't you? She says, stop hunger, stop abuse, stop homelessness, stop child trafficking and sex work, stop sexual abuse, stop all these other things that cause abortion to be necessary and then judge people. Sweetheart, why don't you stop hunger? Why don't you stop homelessness? Why don't you stop all these things? Why are you guys taking so much time? There's so much crap in this comment. It's so long. You took all this time to write this, to criticize me. Why don't you focus on those things instead of trying to stop people from literally saving lives? Why don't you put your focus somewhere else? So as I'm trying to stop children from being unalived, maybe you can try to stop all the things that would make a woman want to have those abortions, okay, in your worldview. Why we can both work on the opposite ends of this issue. But you took all this time to come after me. So why don't you dedicate all of your time to solving all these things? I still care about all these things. But if you don't at least have the right to life, and you guys arguing that the unborn don't have a right to life, that they're not persons, that they don't have value because they don't have they can't feel the pain because it's that going into the whatever, blah, 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 the nerves, etc. You're making the case that a wanted child doesn't have a right to life either. And I know you wouldn't say, well, we wouldn't force abortions on people. Children die from other means. If there's a story about a woman, her boyfriend tricked her into taking an abortion pill. I think that woman deserves justice, and I think her child deserves justice. But you don't even think that's a child. You don't even think that's a person. You don't think that baby deserves rights. You don't think they deserve to be protected against violence. It's not suddenly okay when a mother decides to do it. It's never okay. The father should be able to do it, neither should the mother. And insisting that it's not a person, it's not human or whatever people say, dehumanizing the child, that doesn't just dehumanize the child that you want to unalive, it dehumanizes a child that I want. So what happens if I get into an accident and there's a drunk driver? And people are like, oh, but we can't say it's a person. So I can't get justice for my child. So your abortion, it affects the entirety of society because it forces us to dehumanize these children, even if we want them. That's why in Mississippi, when they had that case where there was a person who dropped the embryos in a clinic, and the parents, it was 3 sets of embryos, and the parents sued the clinic because someone should have been watching them. They should have been secure. And they allowed someone to go in and just drop them. They wanted to sue for wrongful death of a minor. And the Supreme Court Mississippi ruled that they could. And the IVF industry was like, well, we got to shut down. Why do you have to shut down after they said that they could sue and hold these people accountable for allowing these living humans in their care to be dropped and killed? And people were flipping out. How dare you say these are persons? How dare you say these are children? They were wanted. And y'all don't even think that the parents should get proper justice. You don't even think they have a right to refer to them as children. So yes, your mentality about abortion affects all children, not just the ones you want to kill. So you are more than welcome to try to fix these issues, but do not, it's so stupid to come to folks who, and you don't know what all we're doing to address these other issues anyway. Not that it's any of your business. Even if I didn't do anything else outside of advocating that you shouldn't kill people, it doesn't make me wrong for advocating that you shouldn't kill people. Not in the least bit. Don't judge and sit there from your comfortable position in life and look down on your nose. You literally think that children like me don't deserve a right to life because we grew up in hardship. And you say I'm sitting from my comfortable position looking down at folks. You literally think that it's a justifiable reason to kill people like me. At the end of the day, not all babies that are conceived will be born, even without abortions. Well, duh. An abortion or some form of it exists in every single thing that walks the earth. Okay. When babies are born in unsafe conditions, when there's not enough resources for them to survive, when there are those who would hurt them on every side of nature aborts them, or their parents out of instinct are forced to kill them themselves after they are born. Well, parents shouldn't be doing that. Obviously humans would never do that. So we have our own process humans do kill their children after they're being born. We do have our own process, which is necessary to prevent more suffering than needed. Just because it's not flowery or nice doesn't mean we don't need to do it. And people standing in the way trying to prevent it won't stop it from happening. It will just create more suffering, which said people aren't prepared to answer for. That's garbage. And she really didn't even address the video. That entire essay, and she didn't even really address the video. That's wild. That's wild. Not surprised though. When I make content, I don't like to repeat myself a lot on some stuff. And so when I make a post about abortion, it's usually really long because I try to anticipate what people might say in the comments. So I try to refute everything in advance if I can. So when I have a post about abortion, it's quite long, or maybe an article about abortion is quite long, or I'll link to other articles where I address the different stuff. But I like to stay on topic when I post a video usually. So that went far away from the idea that someone's right to life doesn't include a right to of resources from someone else's body or the use of someone else's body. She just abandoned the discussion about the 10-year-old way early into the conversation, and she didn't try to justify how they were different. She just went on her tirade. But obviously this is a young person. I don't know if it's a woman or a man who wrote this. But it's obviously a person who is hurting, and I don't know all the circumstances of their life, but there's obviously some kind of hardship here for them. And I pray that you get the help that you need, because if you truly feel that it would have been better to have been murdered by your parent, that's very dark. And you're saying, and I don't know if you take it this way, but this is what you're saying, that the entirety of your life is a negative. The relationships that you formed, the bonds with the people you know, the impact that you've had in the world, that it would be better if not only you weren't here, that you wouldn't have touched other people's lives. And I just think that's such a destructive kind of way to think. And I think that most people, if they just kind of step back, that they don't actually believe that. So I've heard people who are in the adoption, who've been adopted or fostered, who've had these kind of different viewpoints, but they've had children of their own who they love and they care for, and they have partners that they love and they care for. There's something in their lives that gives them meaning. So it's easy to talk tough about how you wish you weren't here, while you're obviously here living your life to the best of your ability. And you should live your life to the best of your ability. But just as you have that opportunity to do that, other people deserve that opportunity as well. We live in a fallen world, and unfortunately, it's not always grand for a lot of people. I am very fortunate I mentioned that I had hard financial times in my life. That's true. But I have a very loving family. And so I don't have the struggles that a lot of people do have as far as that world goes. But there are tough times, certainly, for sure. But I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed. But the reason why my family is the way that it is, because, we adhere to the word of God. We adhere to the word of God. My parents waited until they were married to have the 7 children that they had. My mother lives by "Don't let the sun go down on your wrath," so she won't carry grudges and on to the next day. Whatever issues she had with my dad, they don't carry on to the next day. If we were arguing, fighting with each other, she didn't let us carry those on to the next day. We live by "You honor your mother and your father," and the parents don't provoke your children to wrath. You do unto others as you have them do unto you. We saw our parents, live the life, not just preach at us, but live through it. So if you want a better life, I would encourage you to look to the good book. And if people who claim to be Christian didn't treat you well in your life, I'm very sad about that. But you have to know God yourself. And I encourage you, if you haven't known the love of a loving father, it's not too late to know one. It's not too late to know one. And if the route you're going to go is, oh, I knew she was religious and she has her opinion because of religion, I can make a secular argument for all this stuff. I can. But at the end of the day, I am really rooted in my faith. And I believe that we're all made in the image of God. We all have inherent value. I think that life is inherently valuable. That's why people actually care about sentience. They're like, oh, we're nothing without our sentience. I mean, without consciousness. They say that because they figure that's how their capacity of how they can experience the world. So there's something inherently good about experiencing the world and enjoying creation that God has made. And I agree with that. But your capacity to be able to experience the world, it's inherent to your nature at conception. So I would just say, sweetheart, that I wish the best for you. And anyone who watches this, I hope that you'll take time to pray for this individual. I know I went off on him, but I'm like reading all this stuff, most of it live. I just basically read part 1 and 2 before I started sharing with you guys. And so much of it is a live reacting, but yeah, I would just say that I encourage you to seek a better life for yourself. I don't know how old you are now. You're grown enough to type that essay. Take accountability for your life and try to change the world and make it better for yourself or those around you. And seek love in God. But I cannot get with your reasons and support unaliving children because of their financial hardship or other stuff. We wouldn't carry those. We wouldn't apply that same standard outside of the womb. So I can't get with that inconsistency. I'm not the one who's hypocritical in the worldview. You kind of seem like people are kind of special pleading a bit. So anyway, God bless you, and I wish you the best. Thank you guys for joining me today. You guys can go to blacktnews.com/ just go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation there. It does cost to stream and run the site and all that stuff. And we do have some needs at blacktnews.com. So if you can support, I appreciate it. I ask that you guys be on the lookout for my video that I'm going to post. Gosh, I hope I can get it up by 9 o'clock tonight. It is a top 10 list of Trump hoaxes that people made against Trump. And so it'll be really good. And so pretty thorough. It's about an hour long, so it'll be a good viewing. If I can't get it up in time, I'll probably just post it tomorrow, but I'm gonna try to have it up by 9 tonight. So be on the lookout for that. And if not, I guess I'll be up tomorrow. God bless you guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.